So introduction to Gen AI. So I'm going to be talking about all the different applications of Gen AI, right? So how the industry is perceiving an industry point of view. So we'll be covering these topics broadly in our today's session. More of a business point of view, right? So where is this area? Where is this field sort of headed towards, and stuff like that? That's what I'm going to be covering broadly in our today's session. Then from after the session, we'll be going into a lot of detail, right? So I will talk about um, the transformer architecture, right? I'll be talking about transformer architectures. I'll also be talking about how some of the most popular GPT models are trained, right? And then we will also be discussing. We'll also then once we understand how the transformer architectures are, how they work, then we will go one level lower. We will actually start discussing about, we'll be doing a lot of hands-on, specifically on trying out some of these architectures. So I'll introduce you to firstly the OpenAI. I'll be focusing on the OpenAI models for a good chunk of this particular course. I'll also see if I can show you some open source models, right? So there are different types of different ways you can access some of these models. So I'll focus primarily on the OpenAI models, but also show you how you can access the other models that are available out there. So the OpenAI GPT models. It's how to access them. Then I'll introduce you to LangChain, which is a library that is very popular. It's an orchestration library that helps you access some of these models very efficiently. Then we will look at um, you know some prompting techniques, right? So I'll prompt engineering to be specific, right? I'll discuss about some topics around prompt engineering, all the different prompting techniques that you would typically have. So chain of thought, right? I'll talk about React. We'll also talk about tree of thought, and so on and so forth. There's a bunch of other things. So we'll talk about all of those. Few short learning and stuff like that, FSL and stuff like that. So we'll talk about all of that under prompt engineering. And then once that is done, we will then get into retrieval augmented generation, which is also popularly referred to as RAG. So we will talk about RAG. We will understand how RAG works, and then we'll do a lot of hands-on on RAG as well. And then after RAG, I will also show you some more complex, agentic architectures, or rather simply put, let's say agents using LangGraph and stuff like that. So I'll probably be closing out the sessions at the end using agents and concepts of agents in LangGraph. So broadly, this is how we will go about doing things. In the later parts of the session, or maybe actually here itself, when I discuss OpenAI, I will discuss, of course, the GPT models. I'll also discuss some of the image generation models here as well. So how you could access the DALL-E kind of models, how can you actually generate content using the DALL-E kind of models. I'll also be discussing that in that session. So broadly, these are the topics that I'm going to be covering. Again, I don't want to, while we are covering one of these topics, of course, we'll end up covering some of the ancillary topics as well, right? So topics around this space as well. I know this might not be, all of these topics that you're currently seeing on the screen may or may not necessarily resonate with a lot of you because you may not know what this space is, but trust me, this pretty much covers the 80% of, I would say, everything that's out there today, right? So a good 80 is, 75, 80% of all the happenings in this particular space is fairly covered in the topics that you see on the screen over here. Okay. Now, everybody clear with this? Does this look good? Any questions? Any thoughts? Brilliant. Very good. All right, let's go. Let's go one step further now. So let's start with the introduction to Gen AI as well. Yeah, yeah. So all of this, by the way, is LLMs only. So when I say OpenAI, GPT models, these are large language models only. When I'm talking about transformers, those are large language models only. So I'll talk about all of that as we speak. So here's the thing, right? Let's start with the first topic today, right? Let's talk about what is generative AI, why all this drama about Gen AI, why has this suddenly become so popular, right? Um, Let me agenda. Let's go. Introduction to Gen AI. Perfect. So while I bring this up, I also want to bring up some presentations. Give me a second. AI can be nicely split into two parts: artificial narrow intelligence and artificial general intelligence. The key operative difference between the two being here: artificial narrow intelligence and artificial general intelligence. What is the difference between the two? See, artificial the difference between artificial narrow intelligence versus artificial general intelligence um, is very simple. So far, we all have spoken about all of these different applications of of AI, whatever you see on the screen, right? Be it, let's say, your Cortana, your Apple Siri, your Google Now, your self-driving car, your recommendation systems on YouTube, your AI capabilities on your machine learning AI capabilities on your Uber app, any kind of AI that we may have done so far. ADAS as well. ADAS is a very, very good example as well. Even ADAS, which has lidar, ultrasound capabilities to identify what things are around it, and stuff like that. So all of these are great AI capabilities, but they are all artificial narrow intelligence. What do I mean by that? Each of these activities, so take for example, YouTube as a good example. If you take YouTube, YouTube has a lot of intelligence in it. One very good example is recommendation engine. So the recommendation engine that you have that is recommending the next video that you should watch on YouTube is only built to do just that piece of work. It can only do that part of it. It cannot, I cannot use that same piece of AI or that same model to do, let's say, to identify what maybe I cannot use that same AI to predict how long will you watch that particular video for, or I cannot use the same model to identify uh, if you would purchase, let's say, the YouTube premium subscription or not. Right? I cannot let it do multiple things. It can only do one very, very specific activity. It'll do a fantastic job of that one activity, but it cannot do anything beyond that. It is just trained to do that one piece of work and it'll just do that one. It cannot help you. That AI model which predicts if which video you will likely watch cannot tell me, cannot I cannot use that to generate subtitles. I cannot use that to summarize that complete video. I cannot use that same model to do other things. It can only do one piece of work for you. To do the others, you will have to build other models. You'll have to build separate solutions for it. And that's how we've been doing it so far. Do we all agree on this? Everybody agrees to this? To solve a specific AI capability, you need to build one model for it. You cannot have one model that does everything, or one model that has a wider application. It is very narrow. It's not to say that it is bad, right? I don't want you all to misunderstand that this is bad. This is not at all bad. This is great. It's just that it is capable of doing one particular task at a time. What we are, but the objective of the field of AI is to try and get to build something like a Terminator, artificial general intelligence. I want to build, or rather, we intend to build Skynet. Exactly. We probably want to build. I don't know if you watched Dennis the Menace. I want to probably build a robot that has got that kind of intelligence in Dennis the Menace, or maybe in Jetsons for that matter. We've all grown up seeing that kind of intelligence, right? So in science fiction, in movies, some form or the other, Skynets, Terminators, um, your Jetsons being another smaller silly example. The point is you want to kind of get there. Small Wonder, not Little Wonder, Small Wonder. Yes. Um, Vicky from Small Wonder, one of my favorite shows right at that time. Um, right. So, point is, how do you get there? So today we don't have any applications of artificial general intelligence, right? We are trying to get there. We are far away from it. We are a good few, maybe I would still assume like a full good few decades away from it. But that's where we want to get to. That's what we would want to really try and aim at, right? Artificial general intelligence. What you and I have is AGI, right? Um, we can do multiple things all at the same time. I can drive a car, I can cook food, I can teach my child, I can learn something, and I can also attend a session in parallel. I can do so many things in parallel with decent amount of accuracy across everything, right? That's what we're trying to get at. Artificial general intelligence is very human-like intelligence. Now, the thing about AI, my friends, is that AI is such a new space. Um, when you talk about when you talk about artificial intelligence, we are more often than not always talking about artificial narrow intelligence capabilities. We're not talking about artificial general intelligence capabilities at all, right? Because we're a couple of decades away. But what generative AI has done is it has helped us make a huge leap towards AGI, but we're still far away. But it has gotten us far more closer to general intelligence than what we would have done had we progressed in the current phase. If we were to build the same kinds of pieces of technology like what we're currently doing, it would have taken us a very, very, very long time to get there. But at least we were able to make a massive stride in that direction. Why? What is it about generative AI which makes us believe that we've gotten closer to general intelligence? Remember, everyone, I am not saying we've made progress on AGI. We haven't. We are still talking about narrow intelligence, but we've been able to make much larger progress towards AGI using generative AI models. Right? I'm not saying by any means that we've gotten closer or rather we have made progress on AGI itself. The objective of a company like OpenAI is to be able to build AGI. That's what Sam Altman has always talked about. He always keeps saying, we want to build AGI, we want to build artificial general intelligence. But not just, I mean, who am I, right? And I'm a small fish in the pond. But if you take, for example, the who's who of the industry out there, they all believe that we're far away from it, right? We're at least a good decade and a half away from it. We need more such wonders like ChatGPT to happen before we can get there. So that's essentially, um, if you were to consider, let's say, colonizing, let's say, another planet as the end objective, our Chandrayaan 3 was a huge leap towards that. Consider ChatGPT or the generative AI as your Chandrayaan 3 success. Have we gotten closer to colonizing the planet? Maybe yes. But have we accomplished anything in that objective? Probably not. We made a huge leap towards that direction. So that's a fair analogy as far as how you should treat generative AI as. But the beauty of this space, my friends, is that with that small leap itself, we are seeing such huge changes in how the industry has started to use AI in their day-to-day basis. The good part is you and I, we have the opportunity to ride the wave and to kind of stay on top of it, right? So you are all kind of getting into the field of AI exactly at the time where this transition is happening. We've kind of made that leapfrog. It's that leapfrog moment. What is it about generative AI that makes us believe that we made that huge? Let me explain. Let me show you a couple of things. Why we say that. There are certain very interesting capabilities of generative AI that makes us believe something like this. Let me show you an interesting presentation from Microsoft. This is a Microsoft presentation. They had actually presented this to us it's a public presentation, so I can very well share this with all of you. I'm happy to do this. What is it about Gen AI that makes us believe that it does things differently? See, generative AI, right? And these are examples, right? It can do far more things than what we are currently seeing on the screen, of course. But for example, you all have used the chat interfaces, right? So this is a very, very good example of it. So if you take, for example, the prompts, so you can actually just ask it a question and it can simply respond back to you. You can follow up on those questions as well. You can sort of have a genuine human-like chat, and it'll actually respond back very, very much like a human being, right? So its understanding of language has significantly improved since the last time, right? So models now understand language very, very, very well, right? So than they would have done probably using any of the other regular AI models, right? That's number one. So understanding as language has significantly changed since the time we know what has happened in this particular space. Or even if you take, for example, the um, your BERT models, you take any of your other models that you've learned that you may have learned about so far, these models are far better at understanding language. Not just that, these models are also very, very good at understanding code, right? They're not just good at understanding language, they also understand code very, very well, right? So they can actually write code for you. I have I cannot tell you how many times, right? So I'll tell you a good example. So today we built a capability in my own team. We built an app in my team, a product in my team, and then we've decided that we should do a complete code rehaul. So we've written a lot of stuff using object-oriented programming, and we decided, you know what, oops, in our setup makes no sense. Let's change it to functional programming, and we just took that complete code bit by bit. We put it on ChatGPT, asked it to convert this into functional code. 20,000 lines of code was rewritten by ChatGPT in a mere 3 days. 20,000 lines of code, we were able to just restructure our complete code base in 2 to 3 days. It's just amazing, just the kind of capabilities that we're starting to see something like a ChatGPT could do. Those are the kinds of things. I can also talk about um, how content generation has changed, right? So one of the things about generative AI, because it is able to generate content, it is able to create new content. We can also get it to create images. I can tell it what image I want, and it actually creates that beautiful image for me, basis what I ask it to create. Um, and not just this. Now you also have videos that you can create as well, right? So you can also get it to create some videos. I can also use Sora and stuff like that that I can also create too as well. I'll show examples. I'll show a lot of examples as we go along for the next couple of weeks. I'll just be showing a lot of hands-on examples itself. So don't worry. Again, I want you to understand that these are the kinds of some of the applications of generative AI. When I say content creation by API, API essentially is simply nothing but an endpoint. You could have a model that's sitting somewhere, and you can interact with it. Don't worry about this line over here. I'll exactly explain what I mean by it. Now, I want to show you something slightly more interesting here. So let me pull up another interesting presentation, and I'm going to share all of this with you. So don't worry about that. This is another presentation by by McKinsey. Yeah, again, I want to talk about a couple of slides on this. Lot of companies these days, right? They have been using traditional AI, right? So they've been doing pattern recognition, and stuff like that, like traditional AI capabilities. Now with Gen AI, you could do code generation, you could do image generation, you could do enhanced pattern recognition. Some of the capabilities that we would have probably wanted to have solved earlier, we would have to solve it we can solve it much faster right now. Why are these models so good, right? So why are these models that we speak about as far as Gen AI so damn good, right? Again, um, approximately what you see here is, and this is again a public presentation by McKinsey, you can actually download it from their website. So what they're saying is, uh, these models are so good because they've been trained on massive volumes of data, right? So for example, one example here is, if you take any of the GPT models, GPT-3, for example, was trained on 45 terabytes of data, right? A complete crawl of the complete internet was used. Some lot of Reddit content, more than 250,000 books, the whole of Wikipedia. Man, that's almost all of the internet that you and I have access to. All of that data has been taken, and they have provided that to the model. The model has a very interesting way of learning. We'll talk about how these models learn. Um, the way they learn is very much to predict the next word, right? So, given a particular sentence, given a particular word, they try to predict the next word. So, when I say the models have been trained, they've been trained for a classification problem to predict what the next word is. Given a set of sentence, given the first word, predict the next word. First two words, predict the third word. First three words, predict the fourth word, and so on and so forth. So you're sort of predicting always the next word in the sentence. So point is, that model is 175 billion parameters. When say 175 billion parameters, what do you mean by parameters here? Anyone? What are these parameters here? Weights and biases. Fantastic, Samyukta. These are your weights and biases. A total of 175 billion weights and biases, not million, billion. Okay? Not features. They are not features. They are the weights and biases. They are your parameters inside the model, right? And had you trained this 45 billion terabytes of data with 175 billion parameters on one GPU, it would have taken you like 32 years to train that model. It would take you 32 years to train that model, right? So you can imagine, if you were to train it for 32 years, then you would never get the model. So what do? How do you accelerate that training? You either reduce the data, or reduce the model, or throw more compute at it, right? I'm kind of oversimplifying it here, but when I say throw more compute at it, basically get more GPUs. Now it's that part which is where a lot of AI wars are happening right now, right? Of course, to train such large volumes of data, such large models, you need more and more GPUs. But to get more GPUs, you need GPUs are not made randomly, right? So GPUs are very expensive. You need to make them. So who makes these GPUs? It's Nvidia's of the world. It's the AMD's of the world. They are the ones that are making these. And Nvidia is in such a beautiful spot here that they have really cashed this cow left, right, and center. Right, so they're doing a very good job with how they're positioning themselves. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Point is again that it's because of that reason, because there is a need for compute. You started to see that you need more and more models, more and more compute. More and more GPUs to accelerate the training. But then even after that, right? So let's say you do all the training. What do you get? You get a model which is 800 GB in size. Very simple. GPT-3 is 800 GB. Can you imagine a model that's of the size of 800 GB? It's that big. It's not storing data. Data is 45 terabytes. The model is 800 GB. So it's just these 175 billion weights and biases that are being stored. And the size of that is approximately around 800 GB. Can you load an 800 GB model on your machine? On your personal machine? Of course, no. You just cannot, right? Your machine has 16 GB RAM or 32 gig memory. Maybe if you're rich enough, you'll probably buy a 128 gig memory machine. How can you load a 800 GB machine? How GB model? That's where APIs come in. Brilliant, Samyukta. That is where APIs come in. So the model cannot sit on my machine. I cannot download the model. Unlike how you and I were building models earlier, where we took the data, we loaded the data in our local, we put it in a folder, we take the code and we actually build it in our machines. Um, you install the libraries on your machine and you build the model. There is no more model building, my friends. Model is not even going to be built by you and me anymore. Model is built by Microsoft, by Amazon, by Google, by Metas. They are the ones that are going to be building the models. You and I are not building the models anymore. You'll be using the models that they've built. Model building, not so much any of our job anymore. When I say our job, of course, unless you choose to work in that space where you want to build models, that's a different story. My point is, as end users, you and I are not building the models. You and I are using these models. But where are these models? These models are going to be hosted somewhere else, in cloud, right? You can load these models, but you will have to set up a data center to host a 800 GB model. You need a data center. You need a huge data center that has 800 GB in terms of RAM. You need racks and racks of RAMs to support an 800 GB model. What do you do otherwise? You put it on cloud. You let Microsoft manage this and say, you know what, I don't care how you manage it. This is the model. You manage it. OpenAI has said, Microsoft, you manage this model for me. You host this model. Provide an interface where I can access this model. Right? I want to access this model over internet. So I just give me a layer, just like how I access a website. I want an interface. I want an API layer. That's where APIs come in, where I can just simply query and I can get the response. I don't want to be in the business of I don't want to be in the business of actually loading this model my own self. So this is almost like a service, model as a service. Exactly. Broadly, is this clear, everyone? Any questions so far? Of course, I'll get into a lot of detail over here about how does the modeling happen, how does the access of the model happen. We'll talk about all of that in great detail, but with what you see on the screen again, these are broad brushstrokes, my friends. We'll of course go into so much more detail around this. This is just the first session where I'm introducing you all to generative AI. But does this make sense? So where does the data sit? Yeah, again, Dhruv, you and I are not loading the model or building the model. So the data is on cloud, right? So the OpenAIs of the world, the Googles of the world, the Metas of the world, they of course have all of this. Um, they'll of course have all of that data sitting in cloud again. They'll of course be accessing all of that data through cloud. Yeah, this is another very interesting. Could you please explain transformer model? Of course, I will explain transformer model. Um, we might not be able to discuss it today, but I'll explain it for sure. Tomorrow, maybe I might actually touch upon that. So, what do you see here? See, Gen AI, my friends, is not new. Gen AI is new, is not at all new. And this is the part that I was talking about, right? If you remember, I spoke about, hey, is Gen AI completely new? Well, maybe not. It's actually not completely new. It has been there for a good 7, 8 years now. So that this is a good view of all of that. The model The foundation of this particular model was first published um, in oops, the first published in 2017. That to December 2017, a paper called "Attention is All You Need" is the paper that was first published. What happened after that? This paper took the world by storm. Why? This paper is everything that kind of completely changed. Exactly, right? This is a game changer. What happened here? So again, I'll talk about this in much more detail when we discuss the transformer architectures. This paper is the paper that introduced transformers to the world. So I'll give you one example. So far, you all have learned RNNs. I'm assuming, right? You all have learned RNNs, recurrent neural networks. In an RNN or LSTM for that matter, or any of your models. So if you take, for example, a sentence which has W1, W2, W3, W4, W5. So let's say 5 words, or how many ever words that you have in an RNN or an LSTM, you're essentially passing the current word as an input, right? And then you could potentially predict the next word as an output, right? And then of course you have a bit of recurrence over here, which is, let's say, an RNN or an LSTM, so to say. You could pass the current word as an input, and you can predict the next word as the output. Then you can take these 2 words as the input, and then you can predict this one as the output. Then you can take these 3 words as the input, and you can predict this one as the output, and so on and so forth. So the training in this particular case, right? How did we learn the dependency between one word to another word? You of course had to go from, you had to take the first word, predict the next word, take the next 2 words, predict the next word, take the next 3 words, predict the next word, and so on and so forth. So you had to learn it like a language where even you had to move from left to right, or whichever way, left to right, right to left, whatever. Point is that you had to sequentially learn the data. Do all of us agree on that? Language is a sequence, is a collection of words. There is an element of sequence associated with it. So you kind of learn from left to right. Now, in the process of learning from left to right, especially when you have large volumes of data, there are issues of losing dependencies, right? When you have, that's why LSTMs came in or GRUs came in to kind of address for those long-term dependencies and so on and so forth. But you still were learning sequentially. So when you learn sequentially, it is very slow. The learning process is super slow, but you still were able to do a decent job of the whole learning process. And what these new models did, firstly, what transformers did differently, right, is they completely took away this concept of learning sequentially. They said, no more learning sequentially. You don't need to learn sequentially anymore, right? Why do they say that? They say, look, given any particular word, this word has dependencies before this and after this. So that's where they introduced a concept called as attention. Attention is a new concept. What it tried to do is it tried to say, look, when you look at a sentence, when you read a sentence, if you take any one particular word in a sentence, so for example, if I say, I had an amazing day um, at the park, rather. An amazing right? I had an amazing day at the park. If you take a sentence like this, every word in some form or the other has some kind of a dependency on the other words that you see over here. When I say I is of course partially dependent on some of the other words. If you take the word amazing, amazing is talking about the word day. Amazing is talking about the word I. Amazing is also somehow talking about, is also addressing the park, right? And if you take, for example, park is again dependent on the word amazing. Park is dependent on somehow the word day, and so on and so forth. My point is, when you take any sentence, every word in a particular sentence has some form or the other, some kind of a dependency with its surrounding words. So, and those dependencies, if you are able to capture it differently rather than simply just trying to learn sequentially, if you capture those dependencies differently and you capture all of those dependencies to some kind of a numeric representation, like some kind of a more efficient embeddings, what you could possibly do is you can just take these embeddings and then simply pass it into the model. So you're eliminating, we'll discuss this in much more greater detail when we discuss transformers. So the point is you're eliminating this sequential learning aspect of models. When you eliminate the whole process of sequentially learning, you are accelerating learning. And the concept of this, exactly, you can learn parallelly. And when you can do parallel learning, you can do a lot more epochs. Your fine tuning, or rather your tuning, could be much faster. The complete math becomes so much more simpler. One of the problems with LSTMs and RNNs is because the math has become so complex that you cannot learn with large volumes of data. But what transformers were able to do is they kind of broke that complete sequential learning down into a very simple, uh, you know, simple learning process, like how you would learn any of the other uh, convolutional neural networks, or even for that matter, a regular feed forward neural network. They just made the whole learning language a very simple exercise. Because of that, these models have become super. I mean, you were able to learn language very fast, and secondly, you could go into far more. You were able to also extract a lot more detail about these transformers as well. We'll talk about transformers in much greater detail in our next session. But the point that I want to make here is these transformer models, because of the introduction of these transformer models, it completely revolutionized the whole learning process of language. Learning language became so much more faster, so much more simpler, and that made it, that kind of added so much more ease with which how people could learn, or how these models could learn. That was one of the reasons why the 2017 paper is a massive leap. It's almost like somebody was saying, right? It's almost like I was reading about it somewhere, and somebody said it's almost like somebody from the future kind of came, because this architecture is so different from how we have learned neural networks so far, right? Um, it's very radical. It's very different from how we have learned language so far. Um, because all that we've learned RNNs, we've learned LSTMs, we've also learned encoder, decoder, sequence to sequence models. Point is, they're all learning sequences. And suddenly in 2017, somebody publishes this paper and says, all that you need is attention, forget about sequences. Sequences doesn't matter. You just need to know how to encode those dependencies very well at the beginning itself. If you encode those dependencies, everything is addressed. Which is why the paper says attention is all you need. All that you need to do is some time of attention. Everything else can be taken care of. So this paper was so radical. And somebody was also saying, right? I was listening to a podcast. It was almost like somebody from the future came in and kind of whispered this architecture in somebody's ears and then left. Right. I'm currently watching uh, Lord of the Rings, the Amazon show, that Rings of Power. Um, it's almost like how the rings were, formed, right? So you have Sauron coming in and whispering it in the ears of Celebrimbor on how to, forge the rings. It's exactly like that. It's almost like that. Like somebody just came in and whispered in the ears of Google and said, um, Yeah, exactly. Sauron is the fallen angel, right? Exactly. So it's almost like somebody just came in and whispered how this architecture sort of be created. It's brilliant the way they've written the architecture, and the point is that once that's sort of created, um, once that architecture was published, you could see what followed after that. 6 years down the line, my friend, you have seen one of the most revolutionary products that came out from there on, right? So you have of course the OpenAI models coming up. You had llamas coming out by Meta. Um, Hugging Face launched their models. Uh, Anthropic launched their models, and so on and so forth. So many models got launched. So many models got launched. This was still very old. Sora came in. Lot of things happened in this particular space. So yeah, look, I mean, so many different people kind of building their own models right now. Even in as we speak today, and this was I think one of the recent posts by EY on how AI is evolving in India. I can actually show you that as well. Let me just show this to you. Yeah, this is the India outlook for Gen AI by Ernst and Young. They very recently published this. Um, Fairly very cool on how they kind of published it. They're talking about how some specific areas where I think uh, let me just go into this a little. Yeah, so a lot of people focusing in Indian organizations, a lot of the work that's happening right now, coding assistance, document intelligence, and so on and so forth. A lot of interesting work that's happening already. Um, there are companies that are building these models itself. Somebody spoke about Bharat GPT. Yeah, there are a lot of companies building their own AI models as well, right? So um, again, super fast. By the way, these images are all created by OpenAI. Um, all the images that you're seeing here, they're all created by them. Here are some Indic LLMs, right? So Ambari, Kannada, Open Hathi, Bhashini. This is the government of India's capability called Bhashini. Yeah, so a lot of Bharat GPT. Somebody spoke about Bharat GPT. Yeah, here you go. These are all the different capabilities in the India space as we speak today. Um, Sarvam was actually the first company called Open Hathi. They actually did a fairly good job as well, and all of these companies are doing a very very good job right now. And in my opinion, they're doing a fantastic job as we speak of AI. All right, so I don't want to go into too much of the detail around how AI is working, but as you can see, there's a lot of Indian companies as well in this space, right? So that are doing that are doing a very good job, right? So there's a lot of Indian ventures, AI ventures that have been doing a fantastic job in this particular area as well. They've also secured a lot of funding by themselves. Uh, but yeah, okay, let's go back to what we were discussing. So huge advancements in the field of AI. That's what I wanted to talk about since 2017. Yeah, of course, I can share this. No problem. Public data. But do you all understand? Is this clear so far, everyone? Do you understand how the space is working? Again, I know I'm giving you a very outsider business in perspective, but it's important for us to start there. We'll get into the technical details um, very soon. All right. Can we expect a small break? Yeah, I thought we'll do like three-hour session. So shall we break at 9:30? That's okay. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, I don't want to get into this, but I just want to talk about this. This particular slide is again very interesting, in my opinion, because see, again, the point that I wanted to speak about, right? Who is building these models? Not everyone, right? Very few people are building these large language models, these large Gen AI models. The only few companies are building this. And if you see those names at the top, very few, these are all big names, right? So these are all big names that are being built. Of course, now you have also have these some of these Indian companies also building their own models by themselves. But point is, some models on text, some models on code, some on image, some on audio, video, 3D, blah blah blah. So many different models that are now coming out, but all of these models in some shape or form are all built on large volumes of data. And these large volumes of data is exactly what we are talking about as far as, or rather, these large models is the size of these models is exactly the reason why we require different kinds of infrastructure to handle. So the way you deal with these models is going to be very different. The infrastructure requirements are different. The modeling requirements are different. So if you're not going to build the model, then how do you access these models? So what do you do with these models? How can you customize these models for your own requirements? Because you're not building the model, now, how do you get the model to work on your data? How do you get it to do what you specifically want it to do? Um, so those things we need to discuss, and there are some very new design patterns that have emerged over the years. RAG being one of the most very common, very popular design pattern that has emerged in how you can use some of these models. But we can discuss them into much greater detail. So let's go back to this. So what are we saying? We're saying, look, AI, massive uh, transformation in the space, um, huge leap towards general intelligence. Lot of very interesting things that have happened in this space since 2017. 2017, the paper Art Attention is All You Need was like the start of all of it. And then very interesting things followed. Now, let me talk about the value chain of this. Okay. So, who is making money? The value chain in this whole Gen AI space, right? Again, a business perspective, we'll get into the technical details, but a business point of view, very important for you to understand because, um, again, the space is super ripe. So who are the ones that are actually making a lot of money here? So let's talk about different personas here, right? Let's take a couple of examples. There are, sort of broadly speaking, there are 4 to 5 different personas here, or 4 to 5 different types of stakeholders involved in this whole thing. At the most at the bottommost level, you have companies like these are your, um, these are sort of your cloud providers. So it can be companies like AWS, it can be companies like Azure, or Microsoft for that matter, and so on and so forth. So AWS, Azure, cloud providers. These companies are providing compute. Right? They are the ones that are providing the data centers. Right? Why are they important? Because they are the companies that are going to be providing the actual compute for these companies to host the models. So it's these cloud providers where the models are actually hosted or trained at. Okay, but who is actually providing them these models? So who's actually helping them build these models? So of course, on top of this, they are the companies or these research companies that are building these models. The AI research companies like your OpenAI, your Metas, and so on and so forth. Of course, Microsoft, and they also of course have their own um, they of course have their own AI research teams as well. My point is, it's these research companies that we are talking about over here. Um, so you have the AI research companies, you have the cloud providers. But under the cloud providers, there is one specific, another one specific piece that I'd want to call out here, which is the hardware provider. The OEM manufacturers, the hardware manufacturers, NVIDIA's exactly, Amir and Ali, right? So it's companies like NVIDIA, the hardware provider. So you have the hardware providers like your Intel, NVIDIA, Intel, AMD, and so on and so forth. Cloud providers like your Azure, AWS, right? GCP. Research companies like Meta, OpenAI, right? You have, of course, Microsoft has their own research company, research division. Amazon has their own research division, and so on and so forth. Of course, all of them. Google, yeah. So of course, Google Brain, and so on. DeepMind, which is their research division, so on and so forth. So again, these are three personas, very important personas. Clear so far, everyone? These are the three types of stakeholders in this. Then, who else do we have here? So the models are built here, right? So necessary computers provided, models are built. Now, what do you do with these models? Then comes again two cohorts, I would say, from here. Two groups from here, right? On one side, these are companies that are no, not consulting companies. These are application, or rather, these are the product companies. These are AI product firms. They are all the AI product companies. And then you have developer tools or capabilities, right? So the AI development tools, development capabilities. What do I mean by this? So on one side, you have, you know, people building your co-pilots, right? Your ChatGPTs. You have you have tools like, for example, your Adobe Firefly, Gemini, exactly. All of these, chat interfaces. Your end consumer products are being built. Consumer B2B, B2C products that are being built. That is all available here for sure, right? And on the developer side, on the dev tools, you're talking about your LangChain, and this is majorly open source. LangChain, your Llama Index, and so on and so forth. So basically, these are open source developer tools. Again, because they are essentially going to be building them to build better capabilities themselves, right? So they are open source models, open source companies. They're building platforms. Some are closed source platforms, like your Langsmith. So you want to build some AI models or whatever. You want to do some monitoring. You would want to do some. So you want to, let's say, host a model in your environment. You want a security around it. You want application level access controls and stuff like that. All of those basically are going to be sitting here. And then on top of it, actually, these companies might also be using them, but I just want to put them here because there is like sort of an overlap between, because they are also directly working here. These are also working here, but These are also, of course, using developer tools and they're contributing back as well. So it's almost like a producer consumer prosumer is sort of the new world over here. But point is, they're also interacting with each other. Then comes the topmost layer, and again over here there are probably again two boxes here, right? So B2B users or your final users, and then there are also at times somebody spoke about consulting companies and so on and so forth. So you can of course add one more layer over here in between, which is the consulting layer, and then you have the B2B users as well that are sitting on top of it. So you might have users here, or you can also have users here, depending upon how you're building these models. The point that I'm trying to make is these users are users like you and me. It could also be companies like your company, my organization, where we are using Gen AI to solve a specific problem and stuff like that. Then, when you are talking about this value chain today, so let's take a very simple example. So imagine I have to, let's say, build a small. So let's say today, one of the things that Gen AI can do a very good job of is generate new content, right? Generate new images for my marketing teams. So where are my marketing teams? My marketing teams are here. This is my marketing team that creates this content, right? So how are they going to be using it? They are probably going to be they're probably going to be sitting here. They're probably going to be using one of the tools that we have over here, like Adobe Firefly or something, or maybe a chat GPT. They would probably just be simply using it. Those are built by either your Microsoft of the world or the Googles of the world or Adobe's of the world. They are built on top of your Azure or something or AWS, SaaS offering, and they require NVIDIA, Intel, AMD. So today, if you look at it, the companies that are making the most amount of money are here. It's actually this probably is the only company that's making a lot of money. None of the others are making any money. The cloud providers are not making any money. The cloud providers are in this race just to make sure they have a competitive advantage. Your Azure, AWS, they're not making any money out of this today. They're charging you, but the reality is they are not making any money for themselves. They're probably, in fact, even losing money in certain instances. It's these OpenAIs. Is OpenAI making money? Probably not. OpenAI is also probably not making any money. It's only the hardware companies that are probably making money in this case. Some AI product companies may be making some money, but very, very early days, right? Some AI companies, product companies might be making some money, very early days. And as far as the end business users is concerned, in specific areas, yes, the business users are making some money. I would not say a lot of it, but they are, of course, they are sort of making some money in specific areas. They are making money for sure. Um, Again, from bottom to top, the folks at the bottom will make always the most amount of money. The consulting companies that make money anyways. These consulting companies will make money on your dead body as well. So these consulting companies, hopeless. These Bains and McKinseys of the world, they'll make money anyhow. Of course, they're making a lot of money. Um, they just have a new thing to sell, so then they'll sell that thing, to you. And it's not my perspective. The point is, they of course will make money any which ways because that's their niche, right? How much ever we think they're useless, they're equally useful because you need them to sell something. They have a certain brand value. They do sell a lot of things, especially in an enterprise setup. As much as I hate to have them, they do a very good job of selling things within my company. So I do use them in my own company to sell things in my own company to my leadership, especially. Um, but the point is, this is the value chain today, as far as generative AI is concerned. It's who's making money is the hardware providers that are making money. NVIDIA is making money. Nobody else is making any money here in this whole thing. Probably some of the end companies like your company, my company is probably making a little bit of money, but otherwise, everybody's currently spending money on this. Everybody's investing. Cloud providers are investing. They're not making any money out of it today. Honestly, they just want to stay out there. But because if they've got a foot in the door, they can make themselves indispensable. Trust me, they'll make a ton of money here. Maybe not today, but eventually they'll make a lot of money. The other thing, my friends, is if you take a product like ChatGPT, right? You know, ChatGPT is built by them. So in the case of ChatGPT, OpenAI is playing both of these roles. They're also giving you some developer tools as well, right? So for people to build some capabilities on top of GPT. So OpenAI has a play in both of these areas. If you take, for example, something like Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft is playing the role all the way till there, right? So they have their models, they of course have their research teams that's building the product, they have their product teams that's building the product, and then they're selling it directly over here. So they're sort of playing a much larger game. Nvidia, interestingly, also has a play here all the way up until the top. Almost here on this side, Nvidia has got some play, but that integration is not very strong. But at least until the research company level, they do have a play. They are integrated until that particular point. So yeah, Microsoft, by the way, also has a consulting org over here. Microsoft also has a consulting org wherein they are also making a lot of money all the way up until there. So their consulting team is also probably making some money out of it. But yeah. I see a question here. I'll take that question, then we can head into the break. When all of them are searching for gold, one become richer by selling a shovel. um, yeah, I mean they are selling shovel right now. It's yeah, I mean it's a modern day gold for them, right? GPUs are everything. They're just capitalizing on the demand at this point in time. It'll get commoditized. Um, Very soon it'll get commoditized. See, I think all of this will die down in the next, especially the cost factor, right? This will die down, but what will remain is adoption. So, what I mean, if anything, the cloud provider should simply be playing the role of for adoption. The hardware providers, if they are trying to play the game of money here, they'll unfortunately lose in the longer run because if not Nvidia, Intel will make money. Intel's playing catch up here in this case because Intel doesn't really have a lot of footing in the AI space. They do have some of their systems, but it's very early for. I mean, I wouldn't say early, but they don't have a huge partnership in this particular space. Is AI more like a hype? Absolutely not. This is one thing I want to clear. This is not a hype by any means because AI, unlike blockchain, is not something that has come in the last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. AI has been there since 70 years now. It is it is a massive leap in this space, which is why you start to see a lot more progress happening suddenly out of nowhere. Otherwise, uh, you would not necessarily observe this kind of uh, sudden discussions in this particular space. Right? It's been there for 70 years now. This is not by no means a hype. The current setup is a bit of a I would say the current situation that the market is in a bit of a everybody's running like headless chickens to try and see what they can do in this. But the reality is, if you want to stay invested for, you need to kind of stay invested for long in this. Right? Don't make short term investments, short term gains. Don't try to optimize for that. That's the only thing. I read a very interesting quote the other day. There's a concept called uh, Amara's law. Google it. What Amara's law says is, the industry has this tendency to overestimate the impact of a piece of technology in the short run, right? Industry has the tendency to overestimate the impact of a particular piece of technology in the short run and underestimate the impact of it in the longer run. Um, so if you want to really make something out of this, if you really want your company to stay ahead, stay invested for long. Don't try to optimize for short term gains. So the best way to do that is build good foundations, right? So build the right kind of skill set. So if you have an organization, if you're running a company, or if you are, let's say, in a leadership role, and if you are trying to, let's say, guide people on making the right kind of decisions, you need to sort of stay invested in that lane. I know not all of us over here are probably in that space, but you need to think of how do you gain in this game. You need to just stay invested, make the right kind of investments by building the right skill sets. That's the most important thing. Just know how the space is evolving. Um, some of these things will change over the years. Um, Technology might change, but the core concept will not change. Transformer models have come in. So transformers will remain the same for the next few years. But how transformers are going to get used to build models and how those models will get hosted, that will all change. Hardware will become cheaper. Transformer architectures will still remain the same, but hardware will become cheaper. Cloud providers will make it easier for people to access these models. Fine tuning these models will become much faster. All of that developer community, all of that ecosystem around this piece of tech will change very rapidly. So, long story short, my point is this is the current value chain. Here's how different players are sort of getting themselves invested in this. I can share more material on how some of the others have made more money. We'll take a quick break. Firstly, is this clear, everyone? Does this make sense? Where the data center lies? Data center is an underground facility in a lot of countries um, where it's like a massive warehouse underground, temperature controlled. Um, yeah, like crazy places, but yeah, in multiple areas. So the world will transform into AI-driven world in all aspects, from household to roads, shops, banks, all industries, and vast opportunity exists. In theory, yes. When is a bit of a question, but it's already happening, right? You already see a lot of that happening today itself. As a budding data scientist, how much should we invest in learning Gen AI? Great question, Ashish. So you need to learn, man. You need to understand some of these, which is why you need to just learn the right amount. Yeah, whatever we're going to be learning, I'm not going to be teaching you something very specific, very niche, because what's happening is the space is changing almost on a weekly, monthly basis. Um, so there's no point in learning something very niche, very specific. I think you need to kind of zoom out and look at macro patterns and learn those macro patterns. Like, okay, broadly, what are the things that are being done out there? I think we'll try and learn those. You don't need to get into the details, into too much detail at this point in time, unless you want to make a career out of it immediately. But I'm also telling you, right? So this space is changing very quickly, almost on a monthly basis. So what you might learn today might slightly change in the next 1 month or so. By a year, rapid change might also occur. So we will learn whatever that is required, uh, whatever that is necessary to the foundation. We'll learn all of it. Uh, should you learn all the nuances of Gen AI? Maybe not, but you need to learn some foundational capabilities, and those foundational capabilities, which is why the 70-80% we will learn as part of the sessions. By the end of the session, I think you should be in a good place yourself. If I want to become an AI expert, what's a quick thing we must start with? Yeah, I mean, it's a very broad question, Vinod. I don't know if there's an answer to that question, but yeah, I mean, it depends. What does AI expert mean? AI, yeah, there's no AI experts. If you want to become a practitioner, if you want to become an expert, my friend, then you will have to, of course, learn about research and stuff like that. But if you want to just become a practitioner in the AI space, then these courses are whatever you're learning. These courses are actually pretty decent. I think they would set you up very very well. Business sort of concepts, but let's go one level lower. Let's get into the technical detail. So we said generative AI can do all of these things, right? So the or Gen AI models, can do any kind of, let's be more specific here, right? So it can do text generation, code generation, image or image generation, and here I'm also going to say question answering, video generation, and so on and so forth, right? So these are some of the very, very popular applications of generative AI. And we said generative AI, or the Gen AI models, the foundation of the generative AI models is the transformer architectures. Right? Yeah, written code generation here. Not sure what the question. Yeah, is the question how code generation, Dhruv? Yeah, because code is language. I can just the way you can ask it to say, hey, take this piece of text and or take something in English and convert it into Spanish. You could simply say, take this in Spanish and write it into in Python. Spanish input and a Python output. It could very well do that. So point is, you and I might treat it as different groups of languages, but at the end, code is language, and it's very easy for these AI models, for generative AI models to nicely write code as well. Um, I'll show a couple of examples of that in the next few minutes. And then we said that generative AI models are based on top of the transformer architectures. So let's start with some very simplistic applications, right? So I'll show you how you can use, or how you can do some of these tasks, right? Very simple examples to start with. And then what I'm going to do is, then I'm going to go towards the technical, we'll go slowly into the more conceptual technical detail of the transformer architecture itself. Okay. So, what I'm going to talk about is, when we talk about Gen AI, I said these are some of the applications. So let's actually see how you could do it. Let's cut to the chase, right? Without actually spending too much time on the technical detail. Let's get to some of these examples. Let me show you some examples here. So, um, so I'm going to set you up for a couple of pieces here. Um, I'm going to introduce you all to. I'm going to be using, for this example, I'm going to be using the OpenAI models, right? So the OpenAI models is the Gen AI models is what I'm going to be using. Specifically, any of the GPT family of models is what I'll be using. As I said, there are many, 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 many different models that are available out there. OpenAI's GPT-4o, GPT-4 are by and large the most popular models that are out there today, one of the most effective models that are out there as well. So I'm going to be using one of these models for the moment. Number one. Number two, how do you use these models, right? There are different ways of accessing these models. What are the ways of accessing these models? As a vanilla user, right, meaning like an end consumer, right? If you are, let's say, bearing the hat of a user, then you can access these models through the ChatGPT interface, right? So the ChatGPT interface is essentially like a chat box, right? Where you can ask any question you want and it'll generate a response back. But you are wearing, let's say, the hat of a developer, right? Where you want to build applications, AI applications, right? So you're not just trying to just chat with an AI, but you would want to also, use this to maybe automate some things behind the scenes. You want to embed some level of AI capabilities into your existing application, existing code, or whatever. Then what you will get access to is the OpenAI interface. Sorry, APIs. So you have an API layer. OpenAI has hosted this model. If you go back here, so the model that has been built by OpenAI has been hosted on Azure. The model is available on Azure for people to use. So I will just go to the OpenAI website and I will create an instance of this. I will share that with you as well. For this, if you want to try out some things, you can try it out, but just be a little judicious. I'm going to be sharing my key with all of you. So be a little judicious, my request. Um, I'm spending money from my pocket, and so please be judicious in how you use it. So I can give you those keys. You can maybe try it for the next couple of days. Let me show it to you right quickly how you could do it. Let's go back to OpenAI API. Let's start with the OpenAI interface itself. OpenAI. So you will have to, of course, go to platform.openai.com. So this is the OpenAI platform. I'm just going to quickly log in. So I have the platform.openai.com over here. Let me go to Playground. Let's go to let's go to the dashboard. In here, if you see, I have something called as API keys, right? I can quickly create a new key. I might already have a project. Yeah. So I have an API key here. I can also look at my usage for the keys that I currently have. So far, the total usage is 0.26, right? This is the total amount of usage that my this thing has gone through so far. And let me just go back here. I can actually quickly create a key. I'm going to delete the older one. I'm going to revoke this. Create a new key. Let's create a IntelliPad GenAI test. Okay. Perfect. So this is the key that I now have access to. I can provide it to you by the end of the session. Let me quickly show you how you could use it. So I have this interface. Let me just ensure I'm not. Perfect. Okay, cool. So now I have my key. I got the key from here. I have stored my key in a .env file. I've created a file called .env, and I've stored this particular key in this particular file over here called .env. Now, what am I going to do? So how do I access the model? So the models are available here in the OpenAI website. The models are accessible. I have the key to access the model as well. But how do I access these models? The beautiful part of this is if you go here, if you go into API reference, and if you see how you can access these models, the interesting thing to install the official Python bindings, run the following command. So you need to install this library called pip install OpenAI. So OpenAI has also created a Python library for all of us to access. They also have a Node library as well. If you want, if you're a Node.js, if you use Node.js, you could also install it through Node.js. But we use Python, so all that you need to do is just have to install the OpenAI library. So let's actually go back here. Exclamation pip install OpenAI, and that should immediately install the OpenAI library for me. So why is the OpenAI library important? The OpenAI library is important because the OpenAI library will give me some functions that I can interact with the model that is hosted on OpenAI's platform. But who will give me the keys, right? Can anyone access the model? Well, anybody can access the model, but you need the key to access that model, and the key is what I have given you here. See, remember, OpenAI models are not free to use. OpenAI models are closed source, which means they will charge you for accessing these models. It's not for free. It is expensive, meaning rather they charge you, but it's not very expensive. It is cheap. I mean, I wouldn't use the word cheap, but they are reasonable in terms of their cost. For the purposes of this particular session, I can give you I can give you the code and I can give you the key. You can try it out. Um, so the cost is here. You can actually look at the costing of it somewhere available. That should be available here. Let me actually show it to you. Models. Oh, so this is the API interface. So yeah, docs, models. So yeah, here is all. There's the pricing. Yeah. So here is the pricing of these models. So for example, if you take any of the models and then you say this is the images, of course. If you take any of these models, GPT 4o, $5 per 1 million tokens, right? So if you have 1 million words or tokens, the cost is 5 million. If you take, for example, an older model, if you take the GPT 4o mini model, the cost is half what it is. Like it's 0.15. The GPT 4o is a slightly smaller model, most cost efficient small model that is smarter and cheaper than GPT 3.5. So 4o mini is actually pretty cheap, fairly cheap for us to use for sure. So when I actually show you the examples, I'm actually going to, this is like 0.15 per 1 million tokens. What is a token? You all have spoken about, must have discussed about tokenization when you might have discussed text. Yeah, tokenization is what? Tokenization is a no. Tokenization is not a request. Tokenization is the process of breaking a piece of text down into individual words, or not necessarily root words, but they're parts of the words. A good way to think of it is, what a good approximation is. Consider um, around 75 words as 100 tokens, right? 75 actual English words would be 100 tokens. That's very much that's how you would possibly use it. I mean, like, so that's like a good. So if you were to kind of convert this into 1,000 tokens, what you're saying is approximately around 700 words. 700 words is like a Word document, right? A simple Word document. If you were to create a Word document using GPT 4o mini, it would cost you so much. That's fairly cheap. 0.00015 tokens, which is very, very cheap. Does that make sense, everyone? Do you understand the costing here? Yeah, so the models are very simple, straightforward. There are two models, GPT-4o, GPT-4o Mini. 4o Mini is the smallest and the cheapest that's available right now. It's not very confusing. Just use the 4o model for everything. If you want, you can also use the GPT 3.5. But the 3.5 model is going to become, um, they're going to kill that model very soon. There are other kinds of models as well. We'll come to that later. But let's go back here. So we know that you can use the GPT-4o mini models, but the question is, okay, how do you actually access it? So let's go to quick start. So here you go. You want to generate some text. What do? Import OpenAI. Well, this is Node, I would assume. Let's go Python. Yeah, that's it. So import OpenAI. You create a client. And then you just simply use this to fire a question. Client.chat.completions.create, whatever model you want, and then you can simply fire a question. You will have to just tell it what you want it to. So let me show you exactly how you could do it. Let me just copy the 4o mini model. Let me go back here. Perfect. So here you go. So I am just going to load the environment. So when I call the dot load environment, what will happen is this dot env file that you have, this variable OpenAI key will be loaded into my memory. Now all that I need to do is I just have to fire this question. So client.chat.completions. I'm creating an object here. This is VS Code, Visual Studio Code. You can do it in Jupyter Notebook as well. This is a Jupyter Notebook in Visual Studio. So you can do it in Colab, you can do it in Jupyter, you can do it in whatever you want. It's the Python interface. Doesn't matter, wherever you want, you can do it. So model equal to GPT-4o mini. Okay, and I'm saying role. So remember, whenever you're accessing some of these models, right, you have to tell it, sorry, you have to tell it saying, hey, look, I'm giving it two roles here. There's always two people, or rather three people, or three entities over here that are at play. One is system. So when I say system, a system instruction is like I'm giving it a persona. I'm saying, hey, here's who you are. Whatever you do, you will have to do it with this persona. So what is a persona that I'm saying? You're a writer at a tech blog. Keep the responses short and engaging. Include very contemporary examples for the questions asked. Right? So I'm saying you're a writer at a tech blog. Keep the responses short and engaging. Include quirky comments in the response. Okay, and I'm saying and include very contemporary examples in the question of examples of for the okay, perfect, cool. The user is I am, let's say, asking it a question. So the user is me. I am the user, or rather, this client is the user. So for example, I am asking it a question. I'm saying, hey, what are the differences between AI and Gen AI? That's the question that I'm asking. And this particular client right now is bearing this persona. The persona is you are a writer at a tech blog. You have to write it with a certain fashion. So whenever I ask this question, it'll bear this particular persona while it's responding back. So take a look at this. What went wrong? Incorrect API key provided. Yeah, there you go. What? Oh, sorry. Just give me a second here. I just need to refresh the. I think it's probably the kernel that's causing this issue. Whew, finally. Okay, there you go. Um, that's the response. Let me just remove the print from here. Perfect. There you go. That's the response that it came up with when I asked it to do it. So what did it do? Let me just go step by step again. I made a small mistake, so apologies for that. So of course I have my user key here, and then I've loaded the environment, as you can see. And then now here I'm trying to, of course, access the underlying GPT-4o mini model. And then I'm saying role user, system. Always remember there are 2 to 3 roles. The third role is that of an AI, but for the moment, let's forget that. The system role is to provide some kind of a persona for the OpenAI model. So the model is bearing this persona. It is saying, look, and I'm telling it, you are a writer at a tech blog. Keep the responses short and engaging, include quirky comments in the response, and blah, blah, blah. And then what I'm also saying is now I'm asking the question as a user. So let me actually reorganize this a little so that it looks logical, because it might seem like I'm asking the question and then. So here you go. So that's the role, the system role, and then the role, the as a user, I'm asking this particular question, and then I'm asking it to generate the response. And the response, as you can see, is here. Absolutely. Let's dive into the exciting world of AI and Gen AI. Here is what it's saying. AI, artificial intelligence, is the broad umbrella under which all kinds of smart technology fall. Think of it as a wizard that can do many tricks, everything from recognizing your face on Instagram to analyzing stock market trends. Basically, it's like a super intelligent friend who can ace trivia night, but might struggle with creative writing. Right? No shade. Gen AI, on the other hand, is cool cousin of the AI family. So why is it kind of coming up with stuff like this, saying is a cool cousin of the AI family who's not just smart but artistic too. It's designed to create new content like generating images, music, blah blah blah. Picture ChatGPT and DALL-E as your artsy friends who at a party would doodle the wildest designs and web poetic sonnets while sharing memes. So it's actually able to write something like this specifically because I've asked it to include quirky comments and I've asked it to include contemporary examples. Exactly. This response is completely generated by Gen AI. Now, if you look at the examples, if an AI can analyze, recommend your next Netflix binge, thanks algorithms, Gen AI can actually imagine the whole new movie script and invent an entirely new character to spice things up. Why settle for another rom-com when Gen AI can throw in time traveling cat as a protagonist? So you see the and it actually added these memes as well. It added a cat. It added a rock, sort of a rocket meme over here, kind of just to say a time traveling cat protagonist. Um, in short, while AI is your reliable assistant, Gen AI is an imaginative storyteller. Both have their perks, but definitely one has more flair. Um, Keep an eye for both of these techno wizards who know that they'll conjure up, what they'll conjure up next. So again, a super cool way of explaining what AI Gen AI is. All of it just because I've given it this kind of a persona. Now let's change this up a little. Huh? Let's say you're a writer at um now I'm going to say you're a writer at yeah at Economic Times. Um, the responses. Uh, now your responses formal and professional, include contemporary. I'll just put that, right. Um, Now I ask it to do this. Let's see what it comes up with. I would expect something super boring, but there you go. Artificial intelligence refers to the broader field of computer science focused on creating systems that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence, such as reasoning, learning, and problem solving. Gen AI, on the other hand, is a subset of AI specifically designed to generate new content or data, such as text, blah, 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 based on your input and whatever. And then, let's say, in summary, all Gen AI is AI, but not all AI is Gen AI. Yeah, I mean, does the job. The thing is, this doesn't have a persona. This, as it said, it's got a lot of flair because it actually is created by AI with a specific, it has its own persona. It's kind of spicing it up a little. It's talking to, let's say, a teenage, a teenage individual. As you can imagine, it kind of resonates with that particular person. So you can kind of give it these personas, and that is what you mean by system messaging over here. Does this make sense, everyone? Firstly, do you understand how you can access the underlying models and get it to generate content? Is this clear so far? Brilliant. Now let's go one step further. What else can it do? Right? If it has generated content, what else do you do using ChatGPT? What else do you do using ChatGPT? You of course ask it to write code. Of course, sure. Well, let's look at code as well. Let's come to code in a minute. I actually asked it to write a poem here. I'm saying, write me a small poem or rhyme about Gen AI. And then the system prompt is, you're a school teacher for a fifth grade student. And then I asked it to write a poem. Let's go. Here's the poem. Uh, in the world of tech so bright and grand, generative AI leads a helping hand. It crafts new stories, draws with flair, creates new worlds from pixels and air. Cool, right? Cool shiz, right? This is nice. It learns from data young and old. A mind is suck, it's truly bold. Yeah, like kick ass. I mean, this is very good. I mean, I think it's also kind of leaving in a little bit of thing here, right? So dream with tech, but don't forget the world needs your passion yet. Generative AI is here to stay, but it's you who leads the way. I think this is amazing. It's also kind of leaving that thing in, right? It's also telling you not to fear. Um, Great question, Soumya. Does it create from scratch or does it take reference from previously trained data? So generally, all of the content that Gen AI generates is all it's generated from scratch. That said, it of course is inspired by the writing styles of all the content that it has been trained on in the past. Of course, those models will help it get better. So yeah, cool. I can also do the same, but I can say, small poem. The So I actually asked it to, if you actually see this question, right, it's actually pretty fun. So I asked it to write in Hindi specifically, right? Um, and there you go. Look at that. So जैसे जादू की छड़ी है हाथ में, जनरेटिव एआई है हाथ में, कहीं भी चाहे किसी भी पल सृजन करता जैसे नया अमल. Kind of cool, right? I mean, again, Hindi is not my forte, but I think it still makes sense. कहानियां बुनता, गीत गाता, चित्र बनाता, ज्ञान बढ़ाता. Nice, pretty cool. Now the thing, it can write better Hindi than me. It can write better Hindi than most of us. Exactly the reason why we think this is. Um, these are models that have learned on such large volume. Of course, these are all pre-trained models. All generative AI models, Priyanka, are pre-trained models. They've been trained on large volumes of data upfront. Um, so, yeah. Will the responses be unique if there are many prompts? Of course, yes. I just change the prompt a little, it will create another. If I run this again, I would expect it to create something new again. Yeah, there you go. It's a completely new thing now. A completely new poem now. Right? Namaste bachon. It starts with Namaste bachon. Okay, you can imagine, right? Kind of cool. Um, this is the 4.0 model. I switch to 4.0 mini. It'll create a completely different model, give different thing again, right? आज हम एक छोटी प्यारी कविता सुनेंगे जनरेटिव एआई के बारे में, ध्यान से सुनो. राइट, सो जनरेटिव एआई एक है जादू की कहानी. Whatever, yeah, so pretty cool. I switched to 4.0 mini. It'll give me a slightly smaller, simpler, uh, uh, जीवंत एआई की धुन. चमकता है कंप्यूटर का जादू, बुनता कंपनियों का हर नजारा. Yeah, whatever, yeah, so you do your thing. So again, point is that you could nicely get it to do stuff like this, right? Yeah, it loves the word bunta. Bunta again because it's actually creating content. So the word bunta is something that I guess it's kind of over indexing on. I don't know. You could get it not to use that, by the way. Here's another thing, right? So somebody spoke about code. Here you go. Here's an example on code. I'm saying I'm planning to build a website for an AI tech blog. Um, and I'm saying, hey, you know what? Give me the HTML that works with some dummy content in it. Also, tell me the steps to test it on my personal machine. System content. You're a school teacher for a fifth grade student again. So you kind of asking it to give you instructions on how to get it to run. And I'm saying I'm planning to build a website for a tech blog. Give me the HTML that works with some dummy content in it. So I'm running it. Let's see what it does. Cool, perfect. You see the response here. Let me just yeah. So here you go. This is the response that it gave me. Um, but anyways, let's go. Creating a simple tech blog website is a great project. It can provide you with some basic HTML code with dummy content and blah blah blah. So the first thing is save the following HTML code in a file called index.html. Okay. So I'm expected to essentially take all of this piece of code and store it in a file called index.html. File. I don't think this is required. Um, NLP rag. Okay, let's store it. Let me just store it on my desktop rather. Test rather All right, cool. So let me go to the file explorer. So it's on my desktop right now. I see the, let me show this to you. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So it's actually now available on my website. Let me just move it to the other screen. Yeah, there you go. That's the website test.html. So you see this. I'm going to open this quickly. Brilliant. There you go. That's my new tech blog. Cool, right? And then I could just go back here and I can follow the rest of the instructions. It says steps to test it on your personal machine, save the HTML file, open a text editor, copy the HTML file provided, save the file with the name index.html, open the file in a web browser, navigate to the directory where you save the index.html, double click on the file. This should open it on your default web browser, verify the website. Right. So this is super straightforward, right? So you can of course get it to create all of this content right from the backend APIs, as you can see. Now the thing is, I see a lot of people sort of getting a little worried right now. I think people are getting a little jittery about everything that they're seeing. Let me address some of this. Um, I'm able to understand what we're learning. We can get such results from ChatGPT or from Google. Of course, yes. Absolutely, yes. You can get it from ChatGPT. The thing is, the point that I wanted to land here, guys, is that you can access the same OpenAI models, which you would have done, as I exactly said here. Where did that go? You could access, right, as a user, you can, of course, access all of this through the ChatGPT interface, but you could also do it through the OpenAI API. Now, what we are doing is something super basic, right? You could get everything that you could do a ChatGPT interface through OpenAI interfaces, through the OpenAI APIs as well. Now, what you will observe is imagine a world, imagine a world where you could, let's say, build an agent in your company. Let's say you work for a company, you work for a organization, you have a marketing team, right? And then what you're trying to do is, let's say you work for, let's say you're the analytics team or the AI team in your company, and you're saying, look, I have a lot of data sets in my company. Can I build an AI interface in my company that reads into all of this underlying data and then helps me provide information? So, for example, if I simply say, hey, give me the latest sales report from so and so particular market. Now, what I want my AI to do is to actually go in, find the right file, return that, and then summarize it and then respond back to you. And in parallel, from the same interface, I might also want it to say, hey, also, can you tell me for the month of January, why do I see that my sales are lower than what I would ideally expect? So then you would want your Gen AI to not just look at that. You wanted to look at month of January, compare it with what may have happened out there in the internet, bring that external context in, combine it with your sales, and then combine and generate a response. Now, something that you could have, of course, done as a human by actually going to the internet, searching for what happened in January and summarizing it, but you can get AI to do all of this for you. The point that I'm trying to drive, my friends, here is generative AI is very, very good at doing these things, right? So, generative AI's fundamental capability of doing question answering, summarization, generating new content, creating new code, you can now combine all of these capabilities in different shapes and forms and then get it to do something super cool, which you would have probably struggle just through a chat GPT kind of interface. So right now, step one, baby steps, right? Step one is for us to see, okay, can I do exactly what I'm able to do through chat GPT through an API? If the answer to that is yes, then we will level up. Then we will say, okay, how can I then combine all of these small pieces and then create like an agent that could do multiple things in parallel? Does that make sense? Manish, is that clear? Okay. I still haven't heard from Manish though, but go ahead, write your question, please. There are 200 people in the session right now. Now, what I could also get it to do, and this is the part that I was talking about with the others, is um, I can also get it to write code for me. Of course, you could do the same using ChatGPT as an interface as well. But again, here is where I want you to think of an interface within your organization where you just build. And this is, by the way, one of the products that I'm building within my company, right? Where for developers, for business analysts, my business analysts they spend a lot of time trying to analyze trying to analyze structured data. So how do I then provide an interface for all of my analysts in my company where they can simply say, give me, summarize the sales in so and so particular market, or summarize the sentiment of so and so particular market, and so on and so forth. Um, then that's what I'm asking it to do here. So write a SQL query. So how if I say summarize the sales, remember that Gen AI is a language mod, or these are large language models. They understand language. They will not understand numbers just by themselves. So what you need to do is you need to somehow get them to understand language or get them to understand these numbers. But one way to do it is you say, okay, keep the data where it is. What OpenAI or GenAI models are very good at is generating code. So I say, you know what, you generate the code and then you use that code to query against the database, extract the response and summarize it. That's what I'm asking you to do. So one atomic action in that whole exercise is to write a SQL query. I'm saying you're a data analyst in a technology company, you're at high quality bug free code, and your expertise is in Python and SQL. And then I say, ensure that you only return the SQL query or a Python code and nothing else. The response can be as a string or a JSON. So this is one of the many activities over here, right? Imagine there are multiple other such activities that this I can create multiple such agents that could do multiple such actions. So when I ask a question, hey, summarize the sales for me, what I'm asking it to basically do, one of the actions that I'm asking it to do is saying write a SQL query to analyze sales of each of the stores in Europe. You have access to sales database and customer demographics. So when I execute this, look what it does. It goes ahead and actually creates the SQL query for me over here. Then I can use the SQL query to go ahead and query it against the actual database, get the response, then pass that response back again to ChatGPT, and I say, you know what, go ahead and summarize this information from me. And then it summarizes it. Great question, Rakesh. How does it know what table it contains? So then what I can do is I can provide that information also over here. Currently, I just mentioned you have access to sales database and customer demographics. But what you could possibly do is you could also pass the table descriptions, column descriptions, all of that into this, and you can generate a response. So you could actually pass that as additional context over here, and you can get it to generate the response. Yeah, it can be different in each system, but there is always a way for you to extract it, right? So you can always in a given DB, you will know all the tables, you will know all the columns, the table description, column descriptions will all be available for you. So you should be able to simply query against it. If it's not there, you'll have to fix that. Rather, all right, cool. So let me go to the file explorer. So it's on my desktop right now. I see the. Let me show this to you. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. it's actually now available on my website. Let me just move it to the other screen. Yeah, there you go. That's the website test.html. So you see there's this. I'm going to open this quickly. Brilliant. There you go. That's my new tech blog. Cool, right? And then I could just go back here and I can follow the rest of the instructions. It says steps to test it on your personal machine, save the HTML file, open a text editor, copy the HTML file provided, save the file with the name index.html, open the file in a web browser, navigate to the directory where you save the index.html, double click on the file. This should open it on your default web browser, verify the website. Right. So this is super straightforward, right? So you can of course get it to create all of this content right from the backend APIs, as you can see. Now the thing is, I see a lot of people sort of getting a little worried right now. I think people are getting a little jittery about everything that they're seeing. Let me address some of this. Um, I'm able to understand what we're learning. We can get such results from ChatGPT or from Google. Of course, yes. Absolutely, yes. You can get it from ChatGPT. The thing is, the point that I wanted to land here, guys, is that you could access the same OpenAI models, which you would have done, as I exactly said here. Where did that go? You could access, right, as a user, you can, of course, access all of this through the ChatGPT interface, but you could also do it through the OpenAI API. Now, what we are doing is something super basic, right? You could get everything that you could do a ChatGPT interface through OpenAI interfaces, through the OpenAI APIs as well. Now, what you will observe is imagine a world, imagine a world where you could, let's say, build an agent in your company. Let's say you work for a company, you work for a organization, you have a marketing team, right? And then what you're trying to do is, let's say you work for, let's say you're the analytics team or the AI team in your company, and you're saying, look, I have a lot of data sets in my company. Can I build an AI interface in my company that reads into all of this underlying data and then helps me provide information? So, for example, if I simply say, hey, give me the latest sales report from so and so particular market. Now, what I want my AI to do is to actually go in, find the right file, return that, and then summarize it and then respond back to you. And in parallel, from the same interface, I might also want it to say, hey, also, can you tell me for the month of January, why do I see that my sales are lower than what I would ideally expect? So then you would want your Gen AI to not just look at that. You wanted to look at month of January, compare it with what may have happened out there in the internet, bring that external context in, combine it with your sales, and then combine and generate a response. Now, something that you could have, of course, done as a human by actually going to the internet, searching for what happened in January and summarizing it, but you can get AI to do all of this for you. The point that I'm trying to drive, my friends, here is generative AI is very, very good at doing these things, right? So generative AI's fundamental capability of doing question answering, summarization, generating new content, creating new code, you can now combine all of these capabilities in different shapes and forms and then get it to do something super cool, which you would have probably struggled just through a chat GPT kind of interface. So right now, step one, baby steps, right? Step one is for us to see, okay, can I do exactly what I'm able to do through ChatGPT through an API? If the answer to that is yes, then we will level up. Then we will say, okay, how can I then combine all of these small pieces and then create like an agent that could do multiple things in parallel? Does that make sense? Manish, is that clear? Okay. I still haven't heard from Manish though, but go ahead, write your question, please. There are 200 people in the session right now. Now, what I could also get it to do, and this is the part that I was talking about with the others, is I can also get it to write code for me. Of course, you could do the same using ChatGPT as an interface as well. But again, here is where I want you to think of an interface within your organization where you just build. And this is, by the way, one of the products that I'm building within my company, right? Where for developers, for business analysts, my business analysts they spend a lot of time trying to analyze trying to analyze structured data. So how do I then provide an interface for all of my analysts in my company where they can simply say, give me, summarize the sales in so and so particular market, or summarize the sentiment of so and so particular market, and so on and so forth. Then that's what I'm asking it to do here. So write a SQL query. So how if I say summarize the sales, remember that Gen AI is a language model, or these are large language models. They understand language. They will not understand numbers just by themselves. So what you need to do is you need to somehow get them to understand language or get them to understand these numbers. But one way to do it is you say, okay, keep the data where it is. What OpenAI or GenAI models are very good at is generating code. So I say, you know what, you generate the code and then you use that code to query against the database, extract the response and summarize it. That's what I'm asking you to do. So one atomic action in that whole exercise is to write a SQL query. I'm saying you're a data analyst in a technology company, you're at high quality bug free code, and your expertise is in Python and SQL. And then I say, ensure that you only return the SQL query or a Python code and nothing else. The response can be as a string or a JSON. So this is one of the many activities over here, right? Imagine there are multiple other such activities that I can create multiple such agents that could do multiple such actions. So when I ask a question, hey, summarize the sales for me, what I'm asking it to basically do, one of the actions that I'm asking it to do is saying, write a SQL query to analyze sales of each of the stores in Europe. You have access to sales database and customer demographics. So when I execute this, look what it does. It goes ahead and actually creates the SQL query for me over here. Then I can use the SQL query to go ahead and query it against the actual database, get the response, then pass that response back again to ChatGPT, and I say, you know what, go ahead and summarize this information for me. And then it summarizes it. Great question, Rakesh. How does it know what table it contains? So then what I can do is I can provide that information also over here. Currently, I just mentioned you have access to sales database and customer demographics. But what you could possibly do is you could also pass the table descriptions, column descriptions, all of that into this, and you can generate a response. So you could actually pass that as additional context over here, and you can get it to generate the response. Yeah, it can be different in each system, but there is always a way for you to extract it, right? So you can always in a given DB, you will know all the tables, you will know all the columns, the table description, column descriptions will all be available for you. So you should be able to simply query against it. If it's not there, you'll have to fix that. Make sense? Okay. How do I give access to my data set so I create personalized GPT? We'll get there. We'll get there, man. I'll talk about it in the next few minutes. In the next few um, sessions as well. But here's another piece of thing that you could also do with the OpenAI, which is this OpenAI model. I'm saying clients.images.generate. Now I'm actually generating an image here. A coder underwater sipping a coffee, and I'm asking it to generate this image for me. And I'm saying I want a 1024 by 1024 HD quality image. and it's going to return a URL for me. And once I click on that particular URL, I should be able to access that particular image as well. Let me just click the URL. There you go. If you see blob.core.windows.net, which is essentially like a Azure capability. So there you go. It's return the coder underwater sipping a coffee. There's a coder underwater sipping a coffee. Pretty cool, right? For my cola beverage brand, it's a party environment in the background. Um, I can say it's a party environment in the background. Focus on condensed droplets on the can, and I can say I don't know. The can is blue in color, or rather, let's go is teal in color, and and a portion of the can is also transparent with blue with pink liquid inside. I don't know, man. I'm just coming up with something. Let's see. I'm being creative here. Let's see if this is going to be equally creative or not. GenAI is the concept. OpenAI is the company that's behind it, which is true. And GPT is the model that is enabling it. Almost there, but yeah, it's kind of. It kind of added the teal and the pink, but it didn't kind of make it a transparent bottle. Though. But it did the other stuff, as you can see. It did the other stuff. But I can ask it to create a realistic image, right? So I can ask it to create the image as realistic as possible. Sorry. So it will hopefully create a realistic image, not that kind of a looks like a very cartoony kind of image. Let's see if it creates any different. Mm, kinda. Again, I'm not very happy with this, but it does have the droplets that it is focusing on. I could actually provide um, uh, I can try to give it copy copy image link. Let's see if it takes us to that image. Very good. Let's see if it creates something like this. Let's ask it to create it something like this. I'm just going to remove all of this. Can we ask for regenerate if you don't? Yeah, just re-execute it, regenerate. That's it. Can it generate 3D images? Yes, you can get it to generate 3D images. Use glass bottle in the prompt. Yeah, I mean, let's see. Yeah, it did bring the Coca-Cola thing, but of course it doesn't use the actual branding itself, as you can imagine. But it did bring the Coca-Cola kind of bottle design, as you can see here. It has taken some inspiration from this. But the thing is, it will not use, of course, the absolute branding of Coca-Cola straight away. You will have to force it to do it. Yeah, number of N1 is number of images, number of um, number of variations rather. But cool, awesome. So guys, I hope you get the idea of this, right? So this is, yeah, you can use the Sora model. You can generate a video as well. Um, Let me just see accessing the Sora model. I'm not sure if the Sora models are available for public consumption, but let's go here. Where are the models? API reference. There's audio. Yeah, the video models are not available to what I know. You need to access it through the interface, if I'm not wrong, but let me check. Yeah, create image and all of that is fine. By the way, you could do this as well, right? Create image variation. So you can pass an original image and you can ask it to create variations of it. You can pass any of the existing image and you can create variations of it as well. It's kind of kick ass because you could essentially ask it to create multiple types of the same image in some sense. It's fun though, right? And then, yeah, the Sora models are not available here. Access Sora through API. There is currently no way to access Sora from a website or an API. So there's no way to do that. Sora is not available. The video is not available. You can access it through the front end if you want to. Through the You can get ChatGPT Plus, and then you can do it from the front end if you wish to do that. Okay, cool. Let's actually try this last one, which is the variation. I'm keen on understanding how that works. Um, OpenAI, and let's try one of the existing. By the way, just to let you know, my just in case you're interested. So this, my friends, Bex is one of the brands that that my company is built. Okay. Um, so what we were able to do is we kind of launched this product called Bex Autonomous, and this was built on top using Midjourney. So this product called Bex Autonomous, by the way, it's in the market right now. It has actually launched in the, people, it is actually now available for people to actually consume. The product itself is available for people to kind of consume or whatever. The point is, from the recipe to ads to bottling to everything of this product has been made using GenAI completely. That's the product. It's Bex Autonomous. Everything's been made by GenAI. By the way, it's sold out right now. It's not available, but they've only launched like a few versions of it. Uh, this is something that was created by the company that I work for. Um, let's go for the images. Let me find one of the. Yeah, let's look at this PNG. Let's try this image link. Let's see how this goes. It needs access from the local machine. Yeah. So that, that's not. So I can ask it to actually create variations of this. Go back here and right. What happened? It has to be a PNG. Okay, it's mandatory for it to be a PNG. Okay. Okay. Let's see what PNG. Let's go. Right click, copy as path. Let's see what it does now. I can of course provide it more prompts. Yeah, so I see some question points here. Advertising agencies should be fearing their lives now. Unless agencies can hire fresh-based modeling. Yeah, so I'll tell you how advertising companies are. Well, yeah, kind of boring though, but it kind of created a version of it. Uh, yeah, not very pleasing, so to say. But I can of course write a prompt, and I can ask it to specifically operate a certain way, of course, over here. I can guide it in a specific direction, of course. I can add a certain prompt, and I can get it to do a few things, stuff like that. But anyways, point is, I see a point there about how agencies are using this. Guys, this is where agencies are, of course, not going to be using this through coding interfaces. But what's happening with marketing agencies now, they of course use tools like your Adobe Photoshop, or let's say Figma and stuff like that. And what's happening right now is these capabilities are now coming as a part of that, right? So these integrations are coming as a part of Adobe. So Adobe, right, Adobe Photoshop, if you take a premium version, Adobe Photoshop has launched something called as Adobe Firefly. And Adobe Firefly is exactly the same thing as what you're currently seeing on the screen. So Adobe Firefly is essentially the same thing. It's generative AI for creatives. So you could kind of do exactly what we just did. So you could do generative fill, image generator, blah blah blah. You can do like a bunch of different things online with stuff like this. Super cool, very fast. So as you can see, like seems like a Pokemon only. This one, I don't know what that is though. Um, yeah. So point is, they're already using this extensively in their work. Um, Code. I'm not sure if you all have heard of GitHub Copilot. It is already a part of, these tools have already come in. GitHub Copilot is already a capability that kind of provides you an interface where you could automatically start writing code. With writing, I don't know if you've heard of Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft Copilot is a capability that gets integrated straight into your Word documents, your PowerPoints. So you can actually ask it to write content for you, write a document for you, write an email for you for that matter, summarize emails for you, important. Something that I do use quite extensively. I actually use Microsoft Copilot very, very extensively for rephrasing emails, right? So yesterday I was asked to write a business case to explain why I should continue hiring in my team. I just wrote two lines on chat on sorry on Microsoft Copilot, and I said like, hey, go ahead and write this email for me. It actually ended up writing it in 2 minutes, and I'm done. Otherwise, I would have had to spend like half an hour writing that complete business case. It would have been an absolute waste of my time. So stuff like this, super easy to do with capabilities like Gen AI. I don't write one email without rephrasing using Microsoft Copilot. I don't write one memo or a document without using Microsoft Copilot or for that matter, even ChatGPT, so to say. So these are how it can impact you on a regular basis with your work. But then what you can do, my friends, is you can take this power of these capabilities, not just use it for personal productivity, but actually take it one notch up. Right? You can combine these capabilities multiple ways and then create agents that can automate workflows. That you can combine these capabilities together to, let's say, scrape from internet, extract from SQL database, extract, read from a PDF document, combine all of it, summarize and write a report out or send out email. All of this in a single shot, which would have been super complex earlier. You would not have been able to do something like this. And all of this without you having to tell it what to do. You can just provide it those capabilities. You can simply write a question and it will automatically do that for you one after the other. We're super capable when things like these start happening, right? And those are the things that we'll of course learn from our tomorrow session. But before we go into more detail about how to use these models, we also have to spend a little bit of time in understanding how these models came into existence in the first place, right? Of course, we'll learn some of that nuance a little. So in our tomorrow session, we'll spend some time in understanding transformer architectures and stuff like that. But probably the session after that, we will get into the more complex nuance of this, more complex uh, agents and, as I said, prompting techniques and stuff like that. We'll get into all of that. Yes, prompt engineering is it's not rocket science. It's just writing the right instruction set. So it's not rocket science at all. So it's not that you have to like specifically learn it or something like that. Okay. Um, I'm doing all AI practice. What is going so tough for me? Not able to understand.